They say family gatherings bring people together. But that day, as I stood at the front door with a gift in my hand and a forced smile on my face, something deep inside whispered, "You shouldn't be here." It was Mom's 65th birthday, a big one. The house was decorated like something out of a Hallmark movie. Gold balloons floated lazily near the ceiling, the dining table was set with fine china, and the scent of vanilla cake drifted through the air like a memory trying too hard to be sweet. Laughter echoed from the kitchen. I could hear my sister's voice, loud, dramatic, rehearsed, like she was putting on a show. My brother joked about something political. My dad grunted his usual fake chuckle. On the surface, it looked like a celebration, but underneath, it was a performance, one I'd been dragged into since I was a child. I glanced down at the wrapped gift in my hands, a locket I'd picked out weeks ago. Inside, I'd placed a photo of me, Mom, and my daughter from the only vacation we'd ever taken together. A happy moment, or at least what looked like one. I walked in. "Look who's finally here," my sister beamed, arms wide like she'd missed me. But her eyes? They scanned me up and down like a threat had entered the room. I hugged her anyway. "That's what we do in this family. We play nice." "Mom's in the living room," she added, then turned away like I didn't matter. Typical. I stepped into the room. Mom looked up from her chair, her eyes softening. She was wearing the pearl earrings I gave her 2 birthdays ago. She opened her arms. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, kneeling beside her. We hugged, tightly, silently. I tried to hold on just a second longer. She smelled like lavender and warm memories. "I'm glad you came," she whispered. "I wasn't going to miss it," I replied, managing a small smile. My daughter Emma had followed me in quietly. She was only 14 but more mature than most adults I knew. She hugged Grandma politely, then took a seat near the fireplace, pulling her phone out but staying observant, always watching. As I sat across from my father, he offered a nod. No smile, no warmth, just a nod, as if acknowledging a stranger. It stung, but I didn't flinch. We moved to the dining table shortly after. The food was perfect, of course. My sister made sure of that. She needed everything to look perfect, because if the picture looked fine, then maybe no one would notice the cracks underneath. As plates clinked and small talk floated across the table, I stared at my glass of wine and thought, maybe today we could just be normal. Maybe no one would bring up the past. Maybe Dad wouldn't snap at me for speaking too loudly or too little. Maybe my sister wouldn't throw one of her passive-aggressive digs across the salad bowl. Maybe Emma wouldn't have to see, once again, the version of family I worked so hard to protect her from. I caught her glancing at me. She smiled faintly, but something in her eyes looked off, like she knew something I didn't. That moment passed quickly. Then came the cake, the candles, the chorus of happy birthday. Mom smiled as we sang, and for a brief second, just a second, it felt real. The joy, the love, the togetherness. But I had no idea what was coming. That this carefully wrapped afternoon would soon tear open, revealing everything I'd worked so hard to keep hidden. And when my phone buzzed in my pocket, I never expected it would be Emma calling me. From inside the same room. The clink of silverware, the sound of glasses being filled, a burst of laughter that felt just a little too loud. I sat at the table, my hands resting in my lap, my smile carefully stitched onto my face, the same smile I'd worn at every family gathering for the past 20 years. Across from me, my sister Amanda was in full performance mode. "Did you hear what happened to Megan from church?" she asked, eyes wide, tone syrupy. "Caught her husband with that yoga instructor. I mean, really, at her age? That's just sad." Mom chuckled softly, stirring her tea. "People do strange things when they feel unseen." Amanda snorted. Maybe if she didn't wear those god-awful sweatpants everywhere, he wouldn't have wandered. I nodded politely, though I barely heard the words. She always needed someone to gossip about, always someone else's mess to discuss so she didn't have to deal with her own. Amanda's life was curated, her house spotless, her children dressed like catalog models, her husband barely present, but that wasn't something she ever mentioned. Dad sat at the head of the table, unusually cheerful. His booming voice filled every silence like a force of nature. He laughed too loudly, told the same hunting story he'd told last Thanksgiving, the one where he saved the day because the guide was incompetent. Every detail exaggerated, every moment carefully curated to paint him as the hero. I nodded along, sipped my water, smiled at the right times. That's what I did. That's what I always did, because it was easier than being the version of myself they always wanted to fix. Emma sat quietly beside me, her fork moving her mashed potatoes around more than actually eating them. She didn't speak much, just watched. She was always watching, reading people like open books. Amanda leaned across the table suddenly, smirking. "So how's work going?" she asked. The tone was sweet, too sweet. I knew that voice. I knew what was coming. "You're still at that little nonprofit, right?" She said, little, like it was laughable. Like doing social work wasn't real work. Not like her husband's dental practice or her side hustle selling overpriced candles. "Still there," I said, keeping my voice even. "We're launching a new program for low-income mothers next month." "Oh," she smiled wide, tilting her head like I was a child showing off a drawing. "That's adorable." I felt my jaw tighten. Emma glanced at me. Her expression shifted just slightly, protective. But I shook my head gently. Not now. Dad jumped in before I could say anything. "She always liked those do-gooder jobs," he said, chuckling. "Never did have the stomach for real competition. Remember when she tried to play varsity tennis?" Laughter erupted around the table. I smiled, or at least I think I did. Even Mom chuckled, though hers was softer, almost apologetic. I pressed my palm against my knee beneath the table to ground myself. Emma shifted in her seat, still quiet. "You okay?" I whispered. She nodded, but I saw the way she was scanning everyone. Her eyes flicked from Amanda to Grandpa, then to Grandma. Something about her silence made me uneasy. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Amanda talked about her daughter's dance recital. Dad complained about taxes and the neighbor's dog. Mom tried to keep everyone happy, offering second helpings and compliments like a hostess desperate to keep the peace. Me? I just played along. I complimented Amanda's roast. I asked Dad about his fishing trip. I offered to help clean the dishes. Because that's what I did. I played pretend, for the sake of peace. Even though every second felt like walking barefoot on broken glass. Even though every memory that lived in these walls echoed louder with each passing minute. Even though this house, this table, these people, once felt like home. Now it felt like I was visiting a museum of my own childhood. I stood at the sink after dinner, rinsing plates while Amanda supervised with a glass of wine in her hand. "You know," she said, leaning against the counter, "Emma's gotten so tall. Looks more like you every day." I smiled faintly. "She's growing up fast." She sipped her wine. "I hope she doesn't inherit your idealism." I turned to look at her. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I mean, you've always been a dreamer," she added, "and that's cute, but this world eats dreamers alive." "I think she'll be just fine," I said, turning back to the sink. "She's smart," Amanda said. "Maybe smarter than you were at her age." I said nothing, just rinsed the dishes, pretended it didn't sting. As the night wore on, the laughter faded. The house grew quieter. Emma had wandered back into the living room. She was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, but not scrolling, just staring, thinking. I walked in and sat beside her. "You okay?" I asked again. She looked up at me. Her voice was low. "Mom, can we go soon?" "Just a little longer," I said gently. "It's Grandma's birthday." She hesitated, then nodded. But I saw it. The way her hands fidgeted. The way her eyes lingered on Grandpa. The way she kept checking her phone, like she was waiting for something. And still, I said nothing. Because saying something would ruin the peace I had fought so hard to protect, even if that peace was just a fragile lie. The laughter from the other room had thinned to occasional murmurs, the kind of soft conversations people have when the cake has been served, the wine has started to fade, and everyone's trying to cling to the last moments of celebration. I sat alone in the hallway, near the stairs, taking a breath. Being in that house always felt like time travel, but not the comforting kind. The photos on the wall, the smell of Mom's lavender candles, the faint creak in the floorboard near the kitchen, everything whispered memories I didn't ask to remember. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, just to check the time, maybe see if Emma had texted me. Instead, I saw this. One new message. "Emma." Then almost instantly another. "Incoming call. Emma." I answered. "Hey," I began, but her voice cut through me. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice was tight, trembling. "Get out of the house. Now." I froze. "What?" "Please, just get out." Right now, don't ask questions, just go. Her voice was low, shaky, almost panicked, and that wasn't like Emma. She wasn't dramatic, she didn't scare easy, and she never ever spoke like this. My pulse quickened. Emma, what are you talking about? Mom, her voice cracked. Please, just trust me. Leave. In the background, I could hear something. Static, footsteps, muffled voices. Then she hung up. Silence. My hand gripped the phone like it was the only solid thing left in the world. I looked around the hallway, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound, the faint clatter of dishes being put away, Amanda's voice echoing from the kitchen, Dad humming something off-key. Everything was normal. Too normal. And yet, something had shifted. I stood up slowly, my breath shallow. My heart was pounding so loudly I could feel it in my ears. My first thought was that something had happened to Emma. Had she seen something, heard something? Was someone outside? I moved quickly through the hallway and peeked into the living room. Emma wasn't there. I walked into the kitchen. Has anyone seen Emma? I asked. Amanda looked up from drying a wine glass. She said she needed some air. Stepped outside a few minutes ago. Outside? I turned toward the front door. The night air hit me like a wave of ice. Emma was standing on the lawn, her back turned to the house. Her arms were crossed, and she was staring at something down the street. Emma! I called out, my voice too loud, too frantic. She turned quickly, walking toward me. Why did you call me? I asked the moment we were face to face. What's going on? She looked up at me, her face pale. There's something wrong, she said. I don't know how to explain it, but I saw something. What do you mean? Where? Inside, she said. Earlier, when everyone was talking, I went to the basement for the bathroom. The upstairs one was full. She swallowed hard. I heard voices. Grandpa and Uncle Derek. They didn't know I was there. I blinked. What were they saying? They were talking about something they did. Something from a long time ago. They said if anyone ever found out, it would destroy the family. My stomach dropped. Emma, are you sure? She nodded quickly. And then Grandpa said, she's starting to ask too many questions. And Uncle Derek said, if she pushes, we'll push back harder. I stared at her. She didn't say your name, Emma added, but they said she, and they were serious. It was cold, like threatening cold. I tried to process it, tried to make sense of her words, but my mind was spinning. That's why I called you, she said. I didn't want to risk you being alone in there. I glanced back at the house, the same house I'd spent my childhood in, the same walls that held birthday banners and old family portraits. But now they felt different. Now they felt dangerous. We need to go, I said quietly. Now. Emma nodded, her hand tightening around mine. We turned toward the car, walking fast, not daring to look back. As we reached the curb, I heard the door creak open behind us. Leaving already? Dad's voice called out. I stopped, slowly turned. He was standing on the porch, smiling that same too big smile. Just stepping out for some air, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Emma needed to talk. He nodded. Family's important. Shouldn't let little things ruin a night like this. Little things? My throat tightened. We'll be back in a bit, I said. He stood there for a second too long, like he was trying to decide if he believed me. Then he waved and turned back inside. Emma and I got into the car. I locked the doors the moment we were inside. I didn't know what I had just stumbled into. I didn't know what secrets had been buried beneath decades of family tradition and polite conversation, but I knew this. My daughter had seen something real, and I had to trust her. Even if it meant turning my back on everything I thought I knew, even if it meant finally facing the truth, whatever it was. I didn't think. I just moved. The second we stepped back into the house, something shifted in me. Maybe it was the way the laughter had suddenly stopped. Maybe it was how Amanda, who never stopped talking, was staring silently into her wine. Or maybe it was the way Dad looked at me from across the living room, like he knew. I didn't even bother grabbing my shoes from the hallway. Didn't check for my purse. Didn't offer any polite excuses or fake goodbyes. I walked straight to Emma, who stood stiff near the front window, her hands clenched into fists. We're leaving, I whispered. She looked at me, eyes wide. I grabbed her hand. Now. And we ran. Not the kind of run people do when they're just in a hurry. It was instinct. That deep, ancient kind of run. Like every cell in my body was screaming, "You don't belong here anymore." We hit the front door, and I heard a voice behind us. "Where are you going?" It was Amanda. I didn't answer. She called again, louder this time. "Hey, where are you going?" But I didn't stop. Emma's bare feet slapped the pavement as we dashed across the front lawn, lit only by the yellow porch light and the flicker of Mom's birthday candles through the window. We reached the car. My fingers fumbled with the keys, hands shaking, heart hammering, lungs refusing to pull in enough air. The moment we were inside, I locked the doors. I looked over at Emma. She was pale, her chest rising and falling too fast. She was staring straight ahead but not really seeing anything. I reached over and grabbed her hand. She didn't flinch, but she didn't look at me either. "Emma?" I said softly. No response. "Sweetheart, breathe with me, okay?" I took a deep breath, loud enough for her to hear, and after a few seconds she covered me. Her shoulders dropped a little. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What? Why?" "I didn't mean to ruin her birthday. I couldn't stay." My heart cracked. "You didn't ruin anything," I said, my voice thick. "You might have saved us both." For a moment, we sat in silence. The engine idled. The house loomed behind us. Inside, I imagined them looking around, confused, maybe angry, maybe not confused at all. I couldn't shake the feeling that they knew. "They weren't surprised we left," Emma said quietly, like she had read my mind. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "When we walked out, Amanda didn't sound confused. She sounded annoyed, like we ruined something." Goosebumps pricked up on my arms. "Do you think they heard you?" I asked. "When you were downstairs?" She shook her head. "I was quiet, I'm sure, but when I came back upstairs, Grandpa was already looking at me weird, like he was trying to figure something out. And then they started being overly nice." I nodded slowly. "Same with your uncle. The way he poured me wine, asked about my job. He never does that." Emma turned to me, eyes full of questions I couldn't answer. "Mom, what were they talking about?" I hesitated. "I don't know," I said truthfully, "but I've always felt like there was something under the surface in this family, something I wasn't allowed to see." Emma looked back at the house. "I don't want to go back." "We won't. But Mom's still in there." I paused. A wave of guilt hit me. She was still in there. My mother? This was her night after all. But she hadn't asked where I was, hadn't called when we left. She hadn't said anything the entire time we were there, other than her forced thank yous and her "so glad you could make it" smile. "Do you think she knows?" Emma asked. I didn't answer, because I didn't know what was worse, if Mom knew what was going on in that house, or if she had spent her whole life pretending not to. I finally pulled the car into gear. The road stretched ahead of us, dark and empty, like it was waiting to swallow us whole. As we drove, Emma leaned her head against the window. "Do you remember when I was little?" she said. "And I used to ask why we never visited Grandpa's house?" I nodded. "You always said, maybe when you're older." I smiled weakly. "And now you are." She turned to me. "I think I get it now." I blinked back tears. I hated that she had to. As we drove away, I didn't look back. I didn't want to see the silhouette standing at the window. Didn't want to imagine the whispers that had already started. Didn't want to wonder what had been planned for tonight that we'd unknowingly escaped. All I knew was this: whatever secrets my family had hidden in that house, whatever smiles were forced and kindnesses faked, it wasn't safe anymore. And maybe it never had been. We'd been driving for nearly 20 minutes, maybe more. The lights of the neighborhood faded behind us, replaced by the quiet emptiness of open roads and the occasional flicker of a gas station sign. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't care. I just knew we couldn't stop. Not yet. Emma sat beside me, curled up against the door, hugging her knees to her chest. She hadn't said a word since we pulled away from the house. I didn't push her. I just let the silence stretch until it felt like the night itself was holding its breath. But the questions in my mind were screaming. What had she heard? Why was she so afraid? And what had been so terrifying that she'd risked everything, her reputation, her family, her grandmother's birthday, to drag us out of that house? I glanced at her again. Her face was lit by the soft glow of the dashboard. Pale, tight, far too serious for a girl her age. "Emma," I said quietly, my voice steady but gentle, You need to tell me what happened." She didn't move, didn't blink. "I mean it. Whatever you heard, I need to know." She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. "You won't believe me." "I will," I promised. "Whatever it is, I promise you, I'll believe you." A pause. Then finally, her voice came, small, fragile. "I was looking for the charger," she said. "Your phone was dying, remember? You asked me to grab it from the guest room." I nodded, memories clicking into place. She continued, "I went downstairs because I thought you left it in your bag, but when I got there, I heard them. Uncle Dean, Grandpa, Aunt Amanda. They were in the office." I frowned. That room was supposed to stay locked. "I hid," she said, "in the laundry room. The door was open just a little. They didn't see me." My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "They were talking about you." She said it like it hurt her throat to even say the words out loud. "What were they saying?" I asked. Emma took a shaky breath. They were planning something, like an intervention, but not really. They said it had to look like one, something official. Grandpa kept saying they had to make a case, make it seem serious enough. Serious enough for what? Emma hesitated. "To take me away from you." The car swerved slightly as my hands jerked the wheel. I steadied it quickly. My heart was pounding. "What?" "They said you were unstable, that the stress had finally cracked you, that you were becoming paranoid, forgetful, emotional. Grandpa even said he knew a doctor who could write something up, just enough to raise concern," he said. My vision blurred for a second. I blinked hard to stay focused on the road. "No," I whispered. "That doesn't make sense." But deep down, something clicked. All the comments over the last few months, the subtle digs, the concerned tones. "Are you okay? You seem overwhelmed. Maybe you should take some time off. Parenting alone is hard." They'd been planting seeds. Emma continued, her voice breaking now. "Aunt Amanda said they had to act fast, that if they waited any longer you might leave town and then it'd be messier in court." Court. That word hit like a knife. "They were going to take you away from me?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. She nodded. "They said if they could get temporary custody, they'd sort the rest out later. Uncle Dean even joked about enrolling me in that private school across town." Tears were in my eyes. "They were laughing?" I asked. Emma looked at me closely. Like it was a done deal. I loved her in my throat. My fingers went numb. Why Amanda had offered to take Emma for the weekend. Why Dad insisted I get some rest and let him handle things for once. Why my sister kept bringing up stories from my past, mistakes I'd made, moments of weakness, always when Emma was nearby. They were building a case. A false reality. A narrative that made me look like the danger. And I never even saw it coming. "I was going to tell you right away," Emma said. "But then Grandpa came out of the office. I barely made it back upstairs in time. I was so scared, Mom." I reached for her hand and squeezed it tightly. "You did the right thing," I said. "You saved us." Her bottom lip quivered. "But what do we do now? They'll come after us, won't they?" I looked at the road ahead. The yellow line stretched endlessly in the dark. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But we're not going back. Not until I figure this out." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Do you think Grandma knew?" I exhaled slowly. That was the hardest question of all. Had my mother, the woman who raised me, who knew every corner of that house, every corner of my life, stood silently while her husband and children plotted to take my daughter away from me? "I don't know," I said finally. "But we'll find out. I promise you that." She nodded slowly, wiping her cheek with the sleeve of her hoodie. And in that moment, something in me hardened. This wasn't just about running anymore. This was about fighting back. The motel room smelled like old pine cleaner and stale air. The beige curtains were drawn tight, shutting out the world. Emma had finally fallen asleep, curled beneath a worn floral comforter, still clutching the hoodie she wore when we left the house. I sat in the hard-back chair near the window, arms wrapped around myself, staring at nothing. The silence was thick, pressing against my chest. But inside, my mind was a storm, spinning, drowning. Everything Emma had told me kept replaying in my head, over and over like a scratch in a vinyl record, their voices, their plan, the coldness of it all. And beneath that storm was another current, one I had buried for years, one I had fought to forget. But now, it rose, uninvited. The past had never really let me go. I closed my eyes and I was 15 again. Sitting at the dinner table while my father scolded me for crying over a bad grade, my sister snickering under her breath, my mother sipping wine, eyes fixed on her plate, pretending not to hear. "You're being dramatic," my dad said that night. "One test. You act like it's the end of the world." It wasn't just one test. It was everything. The constant pressure, the loneliness, the never good enoughs. But my pain was always inconvenient for them. I remembered when I told them I didn't want to go to law school. I wanted to study art. My mother sighed like I'd just confessed to a crime. "You'll outgrow this phase." My dad didn't speak to me for a week. I remembered holidays filled with cold silences, expectations I couldn't meet, and smiles that cracked the second guest left. I remembered how they made Amanda the golden child, straight A student, polite, perfect. She wore her obedience like a badge of honor. She did what they wanted, said what they wanted, became what they wanted. I didn't. So they labeled me the rebel, the sensitive one, the unstable one. When I finally left home at 19, it wasn't a celebration. It was an escape. I built a new life with nothing but a suitcase and a threadbare sense of self-worth. I worked 2 jobs. I took night classes. I struggled, but I was free. And then came Emma. She changed everything. She gave my life color and shape and meaning. She gave me purpose. She was the one person who looked at me with trust, not judgment. I swore I'd protect her from everything I'd been through. I swore I'd never let her feel that kind of pain. But here we were, on the run, hiding, because I had let those ghosts back in, because I ignored the warning signs, because I came back. It had been Mom's birthday. That's what I told myself. Just a visit, just a few hours. But deep down, I think I'd hoped for something more. Maybe a sliver of healing, maybe a moment of recognition from the people who never really saw me. Maybe I wanted to believe that time had changed them, softened them, that maybe, just maybe, they would look at me and see not the failure they raised, but the mother I had become. Instead, they had smiled in my face and plotted behind my back. I opened my eyes, blinking back the sting. In the corner, the dim lamp flickered. A bug crawled across the carpet. And yet, despite the ugliness of the moment, there was clarity now. A painful, cutting clarity. They hadn't changed. They never would. But I had. I wasn't that scared girl anymore, desperate for approval, chasing love from people who rationed it like oxygen. I was a mother, and someone had tried to take that from me. I thought of the way Amanda always said, "You should let Emma spend more time with us." The way Dad made jokes about how exhausting single parenting must be. The time they pushed me to drink at dinner, then commented the next day that I seemed a little out of it. They'd been planting doubt. For months, waiting for the right moment. And I had played right into it. I felt the shame crawl over me. But even stronger than the shame was the fire. They would not take her. They would not rewrite the story. Not this time. I stood and walked to the edge of the bed, kneeling beside Emma. I brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "I'm so sorry, baby." She stirred but didn't wake. "I should have never taken you back there." I sat beside her and stared at the wall, the past flickering like a reel of old film. I remembered the time I told my mom I was scared I might be depressed. I was 16. She told me to stop being dramatic and handed me a mop. "Clean the floor. You'll feel better." I remembered my father's silence after I miscarried my first pregnancy, how he nodded, told me, "These things happen," then moved on like I hadn't just lost a piece of myself. And I remembered the way Amanda smirked when I told her I was pregnant with Emma. "You? A mom? That's rich." I had endured so much. I had forgiven too much. But this? This was war. They didn't just want to hurt me anymore. They wanted to erase me. I wouldn't let them. Not for one more scene. The morning sun peeked through the grimy metallic lines, casting clean gold lines across the floor. I hadn't slept. Not really. I had drifted in and out, jolting awake every time the car passed or a corridor creaked above us. Emma was still asleep beside me, curled into the same position as the night before, her small frame holding tight like she was bracing against a storm. And maybe she was. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my phone in both hands. There were missed calls, 5 from Amanda, 2 from Dad, 1 from an unknown number, and a string of text messages I hadn't read. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they would say. "Where are you?" "You're overreacting." She misunderstood. "Come back, let's talk." But there would be no more talking, no more negotiating, no more pretending. I looked at Emma again, my daughter, my world, and felt something settle inside me, like a piece of myself finally clicking into place after years of being out of alignment. I knew what I had to do. I opened the phone and deleted every missed call, every message, one by one. Amanda's, Dad's, even the unknown number. I deleted the group chat we rarely used. I even removed their contact names altogether. A clean slate. My hand trembled slightly, not out of fear, but out of release. I stood and walked to the small bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. I caught my reflection in the cracked mirror. I looked tired, older than I remembered, but stronger too, like someone who had finally stopped apologizing. For so long, I had clung to the idea of family, that blood mattered, that if I just gave them enough time, enough forgiveness, they'd come around. They'd see me. They'd love me the way I needed. But that was the lie I had grown up on. Family doesn't hurt you and call it love. Family doesn't gaslight your child. Family doesn't plot to take your daughter away and tell the world you're unfit. They were not my family. Not anymore. I sat back on the bed, gently brushing hair from Emma's forehead. She stirred, her eyes blinking open slowly. "Mom?" she whispered, voice still hoarse with sleep. "I'm here," I said softly. "We're okay." She sat up and leaned into me without a word. I held her, letting the silence speak for us. There was nothing left to say. We both knew. We both felt the finality of it. After a few minutes, I said, "We're going to drive somewhere safe, somewhere new." She looked up. "We're not going back?" I shook my head. "Never." Her lips trembled slightly before a tiny smile broke through. "Good," she said. I nodded, holding back tears. I packed our few belongings, some clothes, toiletries, Emma's sketchbook, the worn-out photo of us from her second birthday, and placed them gently into the duffel bag. I didn't look back as we stepped out the door. The air was cool, clean, and the sun was rising higher. It was a new day. We stopped for gas and drove until we reached the edge of the next town, a quieter place, a place where no one knew our names or our history. I paid in cash, careful not to leave digital breadcrumbs. At a small diner, we sat at a booth and ordered pancakes and scrambled eggs. Emma colored the placemat with a stubby crayon, eyes brighter now. "Mom," she said suddenly, "are we really starting over?" "Yes," I said, "just you and me." She thought for a second. "That sounds kind of perfect." I smiled. It was perfect, because we were choosing us. After breakfast, we found a cheap rental, an old converted garage behind a kind widow's house. It wasn't fancy, but it had a lock, a kitchen, and sunlight that spilled in through the windows in the afternoon. That night, I sat with a notebook in hand and began writing everything down. Everything Emma overheard. Every red flag I'd ignored. Every moment from the birthday dinner that now felt sinister in hindsight. It wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. I needed documentation, in case they tried something, in case they pushed harder. I wasn't naive anymore, and I wasn't afraid. I reached out to a therapist, someone from my past who once helped me crawl out of darkness. She responded instantly. We scheduled a session for next week. Then I found a lawyer, a woman recommended in a single mother support group online. Her reviews were glowing. I sent her a message, outlining what Emma had heard and what we'd run from. I clicked send and felt something inside me shift. This was what fighting back looked like. Not shouting, not pleading, protecting. We didn't go online that week. I turned off social media, deleted old photos, even changed the email I'd used for years. It felt like shedding a skin, a heavy, decaying past I no longer needed. One night, Emma asked me, "Will we see them again?" I paused, staring at the ceiling. "Maybe," I said honestly, "but not until they're safe to be around. And that might be never." She was quiet. Then she nodded. "They don't get to hurt us again." "No," I said, "they don't." It's been a few weeks now. The sharpness of that day, Mom's birthday, the dinner, the whisper, has dulled just slightly, like a wound beginning to scar over. But the weight of it, the meaning, that still sits heavy in my chest, not as a burden, but as a marker, A moment where everything split, before and after. Emma and I have settled into a rhythm in our little rental. We wake up with the sun streaming through the crooked blinds. She brushes her teeth in the tiny bathroom while I heat water for coffee. We take walks around the neighborhood, wave to strangers, build new memories out of nothing but freedom and air. It's quiet here. No hushed voices behind closed doors, no forced smiles, no pretending. And in that quiet, I've begun to hear something I hadn't in years. Myself. The voice I had buried so deep beneath guilt, obligation, and old wounds was finally surfacing again. Softer, clearer, whole. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed one morning, watching Emma hum to herself while braiding her own hair. She didn't ask for help. She didn't look over her shoulder for approval. She just moved, confidently, like a girl who finally knew her world wasn't about to collapse under her feet. And that's when it hit me. Emma had saved us both. Not with a scream, not with a scene, just with a whisper. A quiet act of bravery. A single line. Get out of the house. Now. Those words had been my lifeline. The rope that pulled me out of a burning home I didn't even realize was on fire. She saw something I didn't. Or maybe I saw it too, and just refused to believe it. But she had the strength to name it. To move. And because she did, we were free. That word, free, used to sound impossible to me. It sounded like something meant for other people. People without families like mine. People who didn't owe a lifetime of apologies just for existing differently. But now it felt real. It felt like waking up and not having to brace for the day. It felt like laughing without checking who was watching. It felt like my daughter's hand in mine, warm and sure, as we crossed a street in a town that didn't know our names. Sometimes at night I lie in bed and think about the version of me that stayed. The one who brushed off Emma's warning. The one who told herself, they didn't mean it. That version of me never got out. She never felt this peace. She never heard her child laugh like this, fully, freely. She never found this version of herself. And she never realized the truth. Family isn't who raised you. It isn't who shares your blood or sits next to you at birthdays. Family is who shows up, who believes you, who saves you, even when it means standing against everything they've ever known. Emma was my family. Not Amanda, not Dad, not even Mom, as much as it still aches to say it. Because love that asks you to shrink, to lie, to hurt your child for the sake of keeping the peace isn't love. I never went back to that house again. Not to collect my things, not to explain, not even when the apologies started coming in carefully worded texts and voicemails laced with denial. I didn't know. She misunderstood. You've always been sensitive. I deleted them all. The old me would have replied, would have tried to find the middle ground, but that ground had always been quicksand. I wasn't sinking anymore. I started therapy again, real, messy, honest therapy, and I let myself grieve, not just the loss of my mother or my sister, but the illusion I had held onto for so long. I grieved the childhood I never got, the safety I pretended existed, the voice I silenced just to survive. And in that grieving, something beautiful happened. I found joy. Not loud, overwhelming joy, but quiet, steady joy. Joy in slow breakfasts. Joy in silly inside jokes with Emma. Joy in locking our own front door and knowing that no one on the other side was waiting to gaslight us. On the anniversary of Mom's birthday, 1 year later, Emma made me a card. It was just a folded piece of paper, drawn in crayons with uneven hearts and glitter that fell off when I opened it. Inside, it said, "Happy Freedom Day. You gave me my voice. I love you." I cried. Not the kind of cry you hide, the kind that heals, because for so long I thought I was the broken one, the overreactor, the unstable one. But I wasn't broken. I was breaking free. And that night, as we curled up under a worn blanket, watching old cartoons and eating popcorn from a plastic bowl, I whispered back to Emma something I should have said the day we left. "Thank you for saving me." She smiled sleepily and said, "You saved me first." We both did. And in that moment, I finally understood. The real gift I got that day wasn't an apology or a truce or some forced family reunion. The gift was clarity. The gift was Emma. The gift was freedom.